All right, let's to quote Cody Rhodes again. So, what do you want to talk about? You know, it's just this time around. First of all, I'm happy we made quota for October. Albeit both, maybe we kind of mailed it in by doing a pair of space heaters, though. And it's just this time around, it's just me and James. James is in his perch in back in the West End, and back in Mississauga. I'm here in 6 Points. So, for lack of a better thing to do, we just decide to space heater it tonight, and just to get something out there, maybe a few things off our chest. James, been a month. How's it going there on your end?
Busy.
Yeah, just
life
like
kind of comes at you fast, right? As they say.
No kidding. And I've already hinted that already with you guys, right? For you, work has been work for you, I'm sure.
Yep.
I know where Mo's been. I know where Amy's been. They've had stuff on the go.
Things pop up, good, bad, and everything else in between. So
yeah, and I'm in between jobs. I know I didn't want to mention it too much, but there's been some changes too. I've been dealing with a couple changes too.
And I think I remember you saying something about trying to buy a PS5 Pro or something PlayStation-esque on a Best Buy or something. Like I know people.
Always good with the segues, James. Especially considering you didn't hear our space heater when Mo and I did that a couple weeks ago. Okay, let's rehash that. Okay, I guess I'll rehash it with you. And yeah, we talked PlayStation at length. We had our thoughts as to where it could go. Yeah, we talked PlayStation Pro. We talked PlayStation 30th anniversary. The Pro felt underwhelming. I guess I'll start with that.
And I'm guessing, like we had said the same thing. Like I don't think you can actually properly show that unless you're there in the same room, because people have, now that we've seen more people actually have a look at Tokyo Game Show and stuff like that, there is some value there. It's just, do we really want to pay as much as Sony thinks we should pay to basically say, guess what? You get your performance mode and your graphics mode together. That's basically what they're saying.
Well, go ahead. You finish your thought and then I'll give you a thought.
But the thing that ticks me off, as I told you, is we're paying that premium. And so without even looking at the 30th anniversary, which is even more expensive and well over $1,000, we're still over around $1,000 just for that base model in Canada of the PS5 Pro. And that is just digital only. There's no stand, there's no disk drive. It makes me wonder about what's going to happen with PlayStation 6 or what the future holds, because now it really looks like they're saying we're going to the digital future, everyone, whether you like it or not. And the other thing is, we saw it with already the scalping of the disk drive. So remember the Slim mic? So the Slim, they had the digital version, and then the physical version came with this disk drive that was detachable. And so you could use that, and they weren't really selling them. And then once they announced the Pro, they just disappeared, these disk drives. People are scalping them, and they're for like $100 over. So you had to pay another $100 for that, another who knows how much for the stand. Like feels like you're getting nickel and dime just to get this quote unquote premium experience. And for what games? Because they didn't really have much. They were showing older games and stuff like that. Now, granted, there was a PlayStation State of Play. There did show Ghost of Yotoi, which was Ghost of Tsushima's, I guess, sequel, if you want to call it. I want to say, well, this is going to be your tailor-made thing you would want with the PlayStation 5 Pro. The only thing is, I'm not sure it's even going to make 2025. It could be 2026, because with the way game development's going and how these cycles are like longer, you hear about 5 to 8 year cycles, right? Because the technology and trying to make them is so tough now. It just boggles the mind. And then the other thing is we've seen with PlayStation 5, and it feels like ridiculous. Like, of course, we have remasters and redos, right, of older games. We've seen that with Nintendo. We've seen that with everyone. But I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel good when I see, guess what? We're going to redo The Last of Us 1 and 2. We're going to redo, what was it? Oh, the one with Horizon Dawn. I think Horizon Dawn is the recent one they're going to redo and stuff like that as well. And think about it. Some of these games they're redoing are PlayStation 4 games that you could play your PlayStation 4 version on the PlayStation 5. You know what I mean? Like, do we really need to redo them? Like, how much better does it have to look and stuff like that? Like, I could give Sony maybe Last of Us 1 and 2. I could say, okay, I understand because you had the show, right? They were doing the show on HBO and makes sense to tie it in there, right? But the other ones, it's like, really? So it makes me wonder, it's like, where's the new stuff sometimes?
Well, with
To
Sony.
showcase this.
Yeah, I mean, and when they showcased the capabilities of the Pro and all of that, it was just their remasters that they showed off, right? When they showed the technological abilities.
And
And
then,
what is it? What is it? Sony doesn't have to. How many games from their IPs do they have in 2024 so far? I think it's 0.
yeah, they said it was going to be a light year this year. And so, but there are other things too when you think about it that, think about it. The 30th anniversary edition is interesting where they actually gave you a stand with that. Now they gave you some other things, but as you saw, they gave you a cover for the disk drive, but there's still no disk drive. You still have to pay extra to find a disk drive for that 30th anniversary.
Yeah, yeah.
And I admit that looks nice. I think if I was going to go 30th anniversary, and I wish they did more of them, and I'd consider it, is maybe one of the controllers in that, and maybe just one of the regular controllers, not one of the ones that higher end controller
It's
you said was $200 or something.
The DualSense Edge and a DualSense were both included, and it's a 30th anniversary edition of those, right? Not bad. I mean, I know you didn't hear it, but I did joke around. I came this close to pulling the trigger on it on the Best Buy app, but then again, it's Best Buy. And if you know about trying to order on the Best Buy Canada website, it's hilarious. So they like the effort that you go into when it gets busy on that website is enormous. And you could end up waiting and waiting on the lag and all the demand, and it could time out on you. Right?
Yeah, it's as bad as
happened.
It's bad. It was bad on the other side of the border, I'm sure as well, from what I heard of people trying to get, but it was what we expected. At the end of the day, we have all these things and they're legitimate things, and it's like for this type of mid-tier, generation refresh compared to the PlayStation 4 Pro, I don't think there's much that's going to make me say I want to upgrade to this. And the sticker shock is kind of there. It's almost like the PlayStation 3 reveal all over again, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, why don't you get a second job or something like that? You know what I mean? And it doesn't
or get something that pays better. Yeah, I get it.
But overall, like, now here's funny enough, and I think you were the same too, Mike. We both had the original PlayStation 4, and I got it when it was at par, when our dollar was still worth something compared to the US dollar.
Way to go.
And then I thought I was thinking about PlayStation 4 Pro, but the reason I never got the mid-gen refresh for them is I'm like, why am I going to do it? I'm going to get whatever the next one is, right? So that's what I end up doing, and I waited for the PlayStation 5 for the right bundle and that. But it'll be interesting. This one doesn't do anything for me. Like, most of the mid-gen refreshes I ever got were for Nintendo handhelds, for DS Lite or for the new 3DS, and that was, they actually put in something that said, you know what, this is worth something, and then the other thing is the price was right and stuff like that. It wasn't an arm and a leg, and then they weren't taking away features you already had, like the disk drive and stuff like that. And the other reason why the disk drive is important in my mind, I have quite a physical collection, love physical gaming, but as they said with this disk drive is you have to activate it, I guess over the internet or something like that. Like
Yeah,
you've
but
never had to activate it for any of the others. When I got my
to be
PlayStation 5, I didn't have to activate it. And that's another thing that people worry about for preservation and stuff like that. And if the PlayStation 6, for example, allows us to do our discs, right, for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, whatever, it's another worry and stuff like that. Like the only good thing, I'll say one good thing about the disk drive. The only good thing about a detachable disk drive is that if something does happen to it, you can go buy another and just put that into the system. That's about the only good thing I can think of.
Oh, sorry, you did hear me cough. Sorry. I should have hit the mute on there. I do have a mute button on this new board, by the way. Okay, a couple things already come to mind. First of all, I did get my PS4 just before the Slim and the Pros came out, and still, it collected a lot of dust over time. I only really started playing it during the pandemic, so yes, I could feel the processing lag, and that might be the only reason I would have been interested in any Pro model, whether it's a PS4 or PS5, because maybe there's just a faster load time. But right now, because I could tell the difference when I tried to play those same PS4 games on my PS5.
Yeah, because we got that, like basically I'm like, it's good enough. And then I could see the difference obviously on the PlayStation 5 because it was playing it in the pro mode and that. But as you were thinking, for some of the games we're getting for PlayStation 5, I don't think we're going to know the difference. Like they were showing a lot of first party games. Some
Yeah.
of the games I get, like, I don't need every bell and whistle on it. They're not going crazy ray tracing. Like I'll give you an
Yeah.
example.
Okay.
I'll give you a couple examples. One example is next week, East 10 Nordics is coming out from NIS America, from originally released by Falcom last year. And Falcom, as most people know, great games, fun games to play, but they're not known for like the most like greatest graphics or the most technological graphics and all that. They're not pushing the system, but that's not what people are going for when they're playing Falcom games. They love the story, they love the gameplay, they love everything. So I'm going to have a blast and enjoy it. It's going to be one of my games of the year, but I just need the PlayStation 5 to play it. I don't need a PlayStation 5 Pro. It's not going to make it any better and stuff like that. It doesn't have any ray tracing. It needs like, it doesn't need the pisser or whatever. You know what I mean? The one that brings up.
Yeah, it kind
But
of comes back to Nintendo's strength. They know how to make a good game. They know how to make a quirky game, an entertaining game. Not necessarily the most technologically advanced. Not necessarily the best graphics. It's just they make them fun. Right?
And it all depends. Like as they say, they definitely are taking longer on this one with the Switch, for example, for them, because we can start to see things creaking. But probably once they make that jump to the next system next year, it'll be interesting to see. And I think a lot of us will be there, but some of it is because they're probably going to keep price in mind. It's not going to be like, I think, some crazy price like $600 Canadian or something like that. You know what I mean? It's going to be
Well,
probably below $500 or something like that, and that would
well,
include getting games and other things with it.
well, and coming back to the Pro and coming back to the PS5 Pro and its pricing. I'm not gonna. This isn't necessarily a defense, so I'll preface that now as I say this. But there's always been this line that that companies sell their consoles for a loss anyway. They sell them for less than what they are actually worth, and in hopes they make the money back in games. This is one of those cases where maybe the console price is closer to that, and nobody likes it. But and maybe that's and maybe this is the case of just Sony knowing who they are at this point, knowing where they sit in the console wars. They don't really have that type that type of competition at this point. I mean,
Well,
that's the danger of Xbox faltering the way they have. At least when you on some arguments, right?
Well, Xbox, as you said, yeah, they want to be everywhere. But PlayStation 2, they've kind of put themselves in a question mark position of how many of these pros do you think they actually can sell? Because a lot of these first party games, remember, they started the process of saying, you know what, we're going to start releasing some of our first party games on Steam, on PC. And yeah, it's not going to be day and date, right? With what we release on the console and that, but you might get it a year or two later and stuff like that. And so some people might be saying, why am I going to spend all this money? Why don't I try and learn how to build my own PC and I'll just wait for whenever it comes out on PC? Like
Yeah.
they gotta.
Yeah, and that comes back down to maybe just preferences. I remember I said I'm kind of old school in that sense. I grew up with consoles, right? I never the concept of playing a game on a PC. I mean, I understand it. I respect it. Maybe it's just not my thing because I just can't go to the trouble of building one myself with the way my life is.
And some of us, like I'd be in the same situation, but you know where we might decide to go differently is there's a lot of ways to get pre-built, like, you know what I mean, gaming PCs and stuff like that. So it's a matter of, okay, can do your research and figure out the best way forward
Yeah,
on that.
if you give yourself the time to do that. The other thing for me is okay. They're doing this Pro with all these visuals and all that. The PS4 Pro to me, and you can correct me on if I'm wrong on this line of thinking. When that came out all those years ago, like uh, what's the date the Pros came out? I
I can't
forgot.
remember. I usually just say usually it's mid-gen refresh and
Yeah, so
stuff
let's
like that.
say
But anyway,
2016, 2017, give or take. Usually, at that point in history, at that point in home entertainment system history, we had started to make that big jump in terms of resolutions. We really started to make that jump between 1080p to 4K. And the Pro was probably well positioned to take advantage of of those visuals, of those displays. And that's probably a big part of its success. What has changed in home entertainment uh, television technology that could justify something like a PS5 Pro? Because
eight
I'm
eight eight
how
K,
common, yeah,
Mike,
but how
and
common is
remember
that?
they had 8K. I think both the boxes me and you have. Remember some of those PS5 boxes had 8K on there, which was a laugh. Like that was probably the biggest lie that some of those, like they took off 8K off the boxes at some point because like who has an 8K TV? Which games are supporting it? Which is basically none. Now, obviously, Gran Turismo, they were talking that up with the Pro and they were talking about 8K, and Gran Turismo has always been like on the cutting edge of we want to be at the biggest resolution, the best screens, you know what I mean, to show off that technology and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see that, but only so many will be there at 8K, just like when the PS4 Pro, there were probably only so many at 4K and stuff like that. And remember, a lot of people were looking at those refreshes saying, I want better frames per second. I want to be at that 60 frames per second. And that's the big thing they keep on talking about with this PS5 Pro is they're like, okay, we're giving you the ray tracing and graphical fidelity, but you're going to hopefully get that performance at a constant 60 frames per second, because usually at 4K you're probably at more at 30 frames per second on the standard graphics mode in PS5.
Yeah, but is
But it
that
depends. It
it
depends on
depends
how
on
you play, because
preference.
some people I know, they play and they want that 60 frames performance and will take a hit on the resolution and stuff like that. For me, I see, it all depends. Sometimes it depends on the game, but I think for me and maybe certain other people of an older generation, we played some great games with terrible frame rates on the N64 and original PlayStation and other systems that sometimes I'm not sure if we can tell. We're just so used to playing through garbage frame rates, we just kind of plow through regardless. You know what I mean?
To your point, James, my television is an old 2008 Sharp Aquos, right?
Mm-hmm.
How well could it keep up with my PS5?
And the other thing is, how are you going to see the ray tracing and all that nonsense on it? And then, as they said, for some people, depending on the environment they were showing at, everyone has their TV positioned a different way. Maybe some of them have the sunlight coming through the windows on the TV, for example, and maybe that affects how you see the ray tracing and all your other, you know what I mean, what you see on the screen.
Yeah,
So.
exactly, really.
But here's the thing, like, we knew they'd get through the first part of the PlayStation 5 Pro. That was going to sell out. That was a no-brainer, even though the price is ridiculous and all that other stuff. I think, though, the question mark is long-term. I really wonder, like, I don't think it will have as much of a sales, like, success as the PlayStation 4 Pro did. In my mind.
I generally
and I think,
agree.
and I think that while Mark Cerny put on a nice technical presentation, like, it was like trying to say, you know how dogs can see or like hear certain sounds and stuff like that. For us, like, we would have to be like a Monet or some like Renaissance whatever to actually see the difference. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe in person we can't see that difference, but it was next to impossible for, I think, most people to see that when you're watching a stream. And then when you're either watching on Twitch or YouTube, sometimes things can happen in between where you don't get that full, like, it can bump it down or whatever from whatever that original resolution or what have you is, right? So it can affect the quality too.
Yeah, key thing, we just never really had the chance to appreciate it. And that's why it fell flat, I guess.
But that was like, they had not a great month for Sony, so that was one of them. There was other bad news, and before I get that, I guess we should probably sandwich it with the good news. So we talked about things that.
Oh, can I go with the PlayStation 6 theory then? Because I don't think you heard that.
Okay, what's the PlayStation 6 theory?
A leaker, and I have the article this time on hand. It's a leaker. It was it in a NeoGAF forum thread. Okay, Kepler L2, who apparently is a leaker in Brazil. They gave the idea of that. Yes, the PS6 is being worked on. But there's two different chipsets being worked on concerning the PS6 generation. One would surmise from that yes, there's the regular console, probably a good quality one, but what's with the other one? And some have speculated that second chipset, should it exist, is something like could be a scenario a lot like an Xbox Series X scenario, a lesser version of a possible home console. But that doesn't seem like Sony's MO to want to do something like that, right? And then Kepler made the suggestion: could this be for a possible handheld? I mean, we talked a lot about handheld gaming, right? And how much it's evolved since, the Switch, since specifically the Switch. It kind of turned things topsy-turvy by putting I
think the other thing that probably would give Microsoft and Sony thought or food for thought, they do see that, but then the question is seeing Steam basically enter the race and stuff like that, and see how well that's done for them, because
and that's a key, another key moment, right? And then the Rogue Ally.
There's other ones, but definitely Steam, and seeing how they've managed to find success. And it's like
which
they're
is
probably going to do it as a high-end like gaming PC type. You know what I mean? Type
well,
thing.
and maybe we'd be. I think a lot of consumers could live with that if depending on its power, right? And with Sony wanting to work on the backwards compatibility, and this is the key thing I always said. And I think a lot of people believe if Sony should re-enter truly enter the handheld gaming market again, native play of games you already have. I mean, we're past this point where a handheld has its own library of games. People truly want to bring their whatever it is, their console experience, their PC experience with them on the go in some form. I mean, in some ways, that was the line that the Switch crossed, and then it was what is it? What's the word I'm looking for that the Steam Deck did, right? Kind
Mhm.
of it was just firmed up or helped along with since you can use a Steam account and play on a portable PC.
The thing though is, as you remember, is so the actual console itself is the handheld. And so remember, for Switch, we can still use our physical Mia, whatever. Steam, obviously, it's all digital and stuff like that, so there's no issue there. PlayStation, what about the people that had physical libraries? Because some people have vast physical libraries. How do you tie that to their account to say, yes, you can play that on that system or something like that? You know
Well,
what I mean?
now that you bring it up in those terms, maybe this is the generation. This is how they'll handle the physical digital divide. That much like how the PS5 started with the physical and the digital versions of their systems. Maybe
And the
that's what we're looking at. Maybe
and
that's
the
how
only
they'll
reason
handle it.
and the only reason I say that is, remember, we have the Blu-ray discs, and then obviously for PlayStation 5, it's the Ultra Blu-rays, the UBDs and stuff like that. I'm not sure how you get that into the system when you're trying to make it, you know what I mean, a
Well,
handheld.
as I said, I could see that in the console version, but
Mm-hmm.
the handheld chipset is a lighter version, and maybe that's how that's where we are on this. That's how it'll be tackled. Some things you can't do on the lighter chipset. But though there's I just want to put that thought, and remember, I'm pining for for a way at some point to be able to go back to my digital parts of my PlayStation library and take it with me. So this is why that part of the story, that part of where the PlayStation generation is, kind of interests me, right? Uh, why the Portal interested me last year or caught my attention, and why the numbers, how it's doing now has my attention, and what it could mean, where Sony could be thinking later on. But
It's interesting that part of the 30th anniversary Portal was a part of that. They
yes,
actually had
yes.
a SKU for that, which is kind of funny in a way.
Well, all the SKUs, all the 30th anniversary SKUs, I think at last check were sold out. At least the last time I checked, the only thing that hadn't been was just a regular DualSense, and I pre-ordered one. Not sure I'll keep it. I
But
might, because I have plenty of it. I have three already. And and as I said, my only motivation for having wanted to do the Pro bundle, and it's a dickish reason, was to see if I could flip it. But that would make me no better than a lot of those scalpers that are getting hammered. And plus I do need $1,200-$1,300 more for other stuff right now, especially since I'm unemployed, right?
oh,
Okay.
but well, thinking about it, so as I said, like, and as we said, there was a lot of like negativity, obviously, in September. There was that one was a follow up on the negativity for how the PlayStation 5 Pro came to be and stuff like that. I guess before we go to the thing that became the negativity, I think we'll go to the positive light that was in September. And so we talk about how the games, right? They take so long, and basically it's like a shot in the dark and stuff like that. And if they bomb, like they really bomb. And we've seen that with Ubisoft, and we're seeing that with PlayStation. But the one, and remember, they had basically shut down most of some studios for PlayStation. One of those was Japan Studio. And remember, Team Asobi came from that part. And guess what? They released a game that actually was one I'm actually looking forward. I'm thinking of getting for Christmas, and I know people have been playing, and I've seen people play it, Astrobot. And Astrobot kind of feels like that celebration of the PlayStation like spirit and stuff like that. Like they celebrate all the things from all the different generation, whether it's Uncharted and God of War to Parappa the Rappa and all these other ones.
Astrobot is like a time machine game.
And it's basically like
it always felt that way.
Like Team Asobi is basically trying to do their own Mario 3D Mario game and stuff like that. And they have the DNA of how we want to make it successful, and they have got it. Like they got the music, they got like how you're playing, like the controls and everything are down and the fun is there. And yeah, it does have like the PlayStation 5 spaceship and then going on the controller and stuff like that. And they do make use of the controller, the PlayStation 5 controller. So just like what they did with, remember they had, I don't want to call it a demo, but remember the small type of games they had with
Astro's Playroom,
yep,
right?
Astro's Playroom. They kind of, it's almost like they took that and put it into a full-fledged game, and they use every bell and whistle of that controller, whether it's the microphone, whether it's the gyro, what have you. Yeah, the haptic, like they use everything, but they use it and like it's all integrated nicely, and it's you having fun in the game and stuff like that. It doesn't feel forced or anything like that. And the other thing is, this isn't going to be like something that is going to sell any PlayStation 5 Pros. It's not the most graphically intense game like some of their other serious first party games, but it's just a fun game, and it isn't that long either too, but it's just a fun game. And then the other thing is, yeah, there is some DLC, I think they said, coming, but I'm not sure if it's paid or not. It may not be paid, but adding some different worlds and different things to extend the play. But it sounds like something that just people were waiting for, something to just get into and have fun and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it costs as much. It costs as much as the last generation game. So for Canada, for example, it's $79.96. It's not like $89.99 before tax and stuff like that, which a lot of the newer generation games are, like Silent Hill, the new Silent Hill 2, or some of those other ones. Now, even though this was fun, like this was the nice thing of September, was that one. Hopefully, them seeing what Astrobot's done for sales and all that stuff will make them think like maybe we can do some smaller projects, you know what I mean, and get some more creative like juices flowing. And
I think I know where you're about to go.
And that one, before I go to the one thing, I will say recently, I think it was Sean Layden. Remember, he was former boss of Sony and stuff like that, and he had been harping on it forever, and he harped on it again, I think this month in the past week, talking about how Sony, like he said, we're losing our creativity, and if we lose the creativity, it's just we're gonna like get smaller and smaller. Like we won't be able to like expand the market or keep on hitting these higher targets we're supposed to hit financially and stuff like that. And he said like we got to do something. And he said the other thing is the development cycles are getting longer, and other people in the industry have said that. And it kind of hits the nail on the head with this one is Concord.
I knew you'd go there. I knew you'd go there.
And that one is just, like, there's so many things. Like, we can say so many things about it, and it just boggles the mind that there are some people out there that will call us every name under the sun, I guess. And if they want to do that, they can say that. That's fine. But we have to look at things objectively, and people have different opinions. But Concord is just, it boggles the mind how they lost that much money. And the other thing was, no one can believe how fast they pulled the plug. They had like a little demo and stuff like that in the summer. Then they released it. They said, guess what? We're not even going to do free to play for this hero shooter like everyone else in the industry. we're going to make you pay money up front to have the privilege to play this game. And that was first one of the things that made me wonder, what the heck are they doing there? And then the other thing is, it only, like, they just weren't getting the players in there. And then the surprising thing, like, we knew maybe they were just going to put it on PlayStation Plus or something like that to keep it going, but they pulled the plug in 2 weeks. Like, that's the fastest I've ever seen anything be pulled from the market. Like, they literally deleted it from people's systems and gave people refunds and told anyone who had a physical copy, because this had a physical copy, take it back to the retailers. They will give you back your money and we will refund. Like, think about that. Like, the amount of money they lost just on refunds alone is crazy. But this game, like Concord, like, I know that people have talked about the DEI aspects of it and all this other stuff. And just looking at it, feels like it was just put together by Firewalk Studios, these people, and they're just like, we're just going to throw all these things together, but there was no heart in it. It doesn't feel like a cohesive product. And then you're making people play for it. Sorry, you're making people pay for it. You know what I mean? When everyone else is free to play and stuff like that. Like, they weren't looking at what the market was. It's like you have all these people saying, we want to be the next Overwatch, which is what they want, or we want to be the next Fortnite,
right?
And their time has already passed. And the other thing is, they've said for this game, so for Concord, it was about 8 years in development, maybe less, but it's still like 5 to 8 years in development. That's a long time. Like, that's a long time. And things can change in the market in that time. And the other thing is, I think it was like, they were part of another organization. Then basically Sony bought them up during development because they believed in them so much. And that was probably a mistake. Like, someone at Sony should have taken a look and said, hey guys, maybe we should retool this a bit or think about our direction. And it seems the people at Firewalk, they were all on the same page of, this is how we're doing it. They didn't seem to want to take other considerations like in mind and stuff like that. Like, when people have talked about inside Firewalk and stuff like that, some of the people there, it's like they just didn't want to listen to dissent. It was like, I think the term a few people wanted to use was toxic positivity, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's like they were living in their own world. You know what I mean? And I wish someone would have said, grab them by the neck and sit and, shake them a bit and say, you know what? We got to actually look at what we have here, because it may not work out. And guess what? It didn't work out, and people are actually going to lose their jobs, and it's going to cause problems. You know what I mean? And it's not a small like studio. This is a fairly big studio. And that's the killer thing. Like, the customer didn't want to buy your product. You should have actually thought about this as you were going through to create this game. And if you're okay with the product, right, Mike? And they were saying, okay, this is what we believe in, stuff like that, that's fine. But you have to know the market may only be so big, right? It may be a smaller market than you realize. They were going AAA, but it wasn't a AAA type game that they were going to hit. You know what I mean? For metrics.
Yeah. No, personally, I would have never been into it myself, but.
And I wasn't really into the hero shooters and stuff like that, but some people said it was bland and it wasn't doing much for them. The funny thing, though, is even though the game is gone and all this, now here's the funny thing. There have been things in Steam saying they are updating the game. It'll be interesting to see like how they try to relaunch this, because I think it's dead on arrival. I don't know how you relaunch this even free to play, but we'll see what Sony pulls out of the hat. But the one thing we know that is coming is, remember Amazon's doing that show, that video game show and stuff like that. And they were doing different video games where in each episode, and Concord was one of the episodes. Okay, it's called Secret Levels, what it's called. and so
Is
that's
this on
coming
Amazon
later.
Prime? Is this on Prime?
I believe so, yeah, and it's coming out
I do
later
have a
on this year.
I do have a Prime. I did take out a 1 month Prime subscription, so maybe.
But I think it's later in the year, and they were like doing each episode different game and stuff like that. And supposedly Concord was one of the episodes that was
That's
going to
gonna
be
be
inspire one of the episodes. So that might be one of the few things that
that'll
survives
be an
from this
interesting.
disaster.
That might be an interesting episode, without a doubt. Okay.
But we'll
Um,
see. You never know. Maybe they can pull a rabbit out of the hat for Concord. But I highly, highly doubt. I think it's so toxic now. I don't know how you sell it. You know what I mean? So
PR is a thing. Okay. I think we've talked PlayStation and Sony enough.
well,
And video games
I
as a
could
whole.
talk to you about funny enough before we switch over about Nintendo and
Okay.
about
Well, you know
what
this
their
better than
next
I do.
you know what their next console is, right? Did you hear about it last week?
Well, I've
We're
heard.
we're
I only know.
we're gonna play our video games, Mike, on an alarm clock.
Oh, that.
That's what I heard about when I went into a meeting last week, and I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And then I found out about Alarmo, so I had a good laugh about that,
Well,
just as a funny aside.
I should note the. You know what? I'll note the trailer. It does look kind of interesting, actually. At least for the sake of knowing what it's more about, right?
Well, I think the other thing we
I've
say
heard
too
of
is
it.
no idea dies at Nintendo, because remember they had it was when Satoru Iwata was alive, and it was something to do with sleep and stuff like that. So I wonder if that kind of turned into the Alarmo and stuff like that, because it kind of senses your sleep, but it can only sense it for one person, and then it you can put different sounds in there for the alarm and all that stuff. But not for
Well,
me. But it's interesting to see how that goes, I guess.
you. I know you'd have a field day in that Nintendo museum that just opened up.
Well, I think it'd be interesting to go and see the Hanafuda parts and stuff like that too. Like, there's different things you can do. I think they had the store as well, so different plushes there. It's like the big game controllers are intriguing too, right? Or some of the
Oh,
ones where.
the huge ones. Yeah.
Hmm. Or you can do. I think they have the grab the thing where you know what I mean. Their first one where you can grab things with that. Oh, I forget what they call it. The grab mechanic thing. And then there was the one where they had the pitching machine, remember? And you're hitting it inside an old Japanese room or something like that.
And then the shooting game and that shooting gallery, right?
Yeah, which was basically what they
That,
did. Remember,
that
they
was a
took over the old bowling alleys and then they had them shooting clay pigeons, and so that's kind of what that is.
Yeah, kind of. All of it's like using modern technology, but a shout out to every aspect of Nintendo's past, right? And I found that kind of a neat direct when we saw that about a month ago, I think it was. But
Yeah, no, obviously they're only going to have that probably in Kyoto. So if we ever want to see a Nintendo museum, we'll go there. It'll be interesting to see how it expands. They said they've done a few things with the museum part to show more prototypes and other things about Nintendo's history. So it would be nice to see more of that, because people do want to see the history and stuff like that
it's good for archiving.
too.
Could be good for archives. Anyway, I know we've used up a lot of time already, and as a space heater, you don't want to use up too much. But I guess there are things that have happened in the last week or so that's caught our attention, and I guess this is where we start to drag things back into the anime discussion again. Toho, what the hell are they doing? Like,
Well,
what?
they had already set up an American subsidiary or something like that. Remember, they had set something up in California, I believe, before they even made this announcement. Like, people weren't what they were going to do with, if are they going to try and distribute their own things in that. But I wonder if they had already been in discussions with G Kids, because this week, as you were alluding to, G Kids was bought up by Toho, which is a major Japanese distributor and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I get vibes of Best Buy buying Future Shop here in Canada 20 years ago. right? Toho, correct me, or at least jog my memory a little bit. How good is their international distribution?
And
Right.
that's the thing, is mostly they're based in Japan and stuff like that. And then I wonder if some of this is to do with, remember, we have Godzilla has always been a part of Toho, and you think about Kurosawa and some of their legacy and stuff like that. And I wonder if they're thinking of branching out and stuff like that to get some of that stuff out there, right,
Mm-hmm.
into the world. But the other part of it is probably the animation aspect too, because they know of the growth that all the streamers and all the anime and manga has had worldwide. So that's probably an aspect of it too. So they probably looked and thought G Kids would be a good fit for them. And the other thing is they're keeping like everyone at G Kids, all the senior staff and all that stuff. They're all staying on to run G Kids. So hopefully that's a good sign for the future and stuff like that, for them to run it as it is, to get all those movies into theaters and stuff like that, for people to see them in that setting, and then to if they have the rights to release them on Blu-ray for home video. The only thing I think some people are thinking about, and I think because they have the same team it'll still be okay, is they didn't do just like Ghibli films or anime and stuff like that. They also did other international animations and stuff like that. Like I know oh, was it the one from Ireland, Kells, I forget the name of it, but that was one that I remember was big for them too. But they've done other ones that are outside Japan.
But as I said, it's just using those links. That's what it comes down to me. Just being able to use those channels and use those resources and have it benefit them later on. If they with whatever projects Toho wants to move internationally themselves. Fascinating story. Does it make any, like, I think you've answered this question already, but I'll ask it again. Does it make for a weird dynamic, especially with something like what could happen to streaming rights for Ghibli films? Because it just, I wonder, like, is it, or let me backtrack a little bit. Is this where on the on the which equation sounds more plausible, or which on the spectrum? Does it sound more like the Best Buy Future Shop thing? Or does it sound more like Strange Bedfellows, a la, say, maybe the makeup of Viz, Kodansha and Sueisha and Shogakukan? Or let's get a little bit more local, when MLSC was owned by both Rogers and Bell. That's changing, by the way, obviously. I'm sure if you keep up with that. Which on the spectrum, where does this stand? Does it stand closer to the former or the latter? Because I'm thinking, the more I think about it, the more I think it's the former.
I could see it.
Or is this more is that really apples and oranges?
See, it could be more the former, like you think, and we see the different statements, like from G Kids founder Eric Beckman, and we see the statement from the CEO and president of Toho, Hiro Matsuoka, and stuff like that. And remember, for Toho, they distribute a lot of movies and stuff like that, and that's basically what G Kids, their primary focus is getting stuff into theaters in the animated form. It'll be interesting to see, will Toho extend them to maybe do some live action, but I think they're going to stick with animation and stuff like that. But I think it'll be like working together to expand the market for those type of showings in North America,
Now,
and maybe even in other places, because remember, G Kids was mostly North America. So does that help them get a greater reach in other regions like Europe, Australia, New Zealand, places like that? You know what I mean?
I'm just thinking, okay, work on the overlap here, right? Or, okay, so that's one part. That's one of the things that Toho has done this week. The other one is Comics.
Yep. And that one's
6%.
local
was
to
announced.
Japan and stuff like that. And
That was today. That was announced today. I think
yeah, the
today. Or at
comics.
least you. Let me just double check. 16th. Oh, 2 days ago. Sorry.
Yeah, that was earlier on, but it was just a little after they had done that, and so Toho has distributed some of Comix's works, and Makoto Shinkai has done stuff through Comix and stuff like that. So obviously, they feel confident enough that they gave them a bit of a investment and stuff like that. And it's kind of like I would say, I believe you. We believe in you investment because it's only
I believe.
6% of.
I believe in comics, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
well, one part that already sticks out to me is okay. Let's talk about the next thing that Makoto Shinkai does. Does it almost guarantee that it'll be a G Kids release, or or am I thinking too much? Because
Well,
maybe,
it's went both ways before, right? But
oh yeah, with
I would say that
Funimation
it
or
probably it
Crunchyroll.
probably helps their chances in getting, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
that the next Makoto Shinkai thing. And for the 6% investment, what Toho said and what Comics said, the investment was intended for is they're earmarking that money for. They said the investment is intended to elevate the studio's working environment in order to raise the quality of their works and increase the studio's creative opportunities. So it's probably also trying to help maybe others in the studio, like bring out their stories too, right?
Sure. I mean, we did talk some years back about, well, Comics is trying to branch is in the mood to show stuff from other artists aside from Makoto Shinkai these days, or they're
Mm-hmm.
probably starting to make that move. I mean, I mentioned that with that Netflix trilogy some years back, but whose name I forgot right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but there's Toho, and that's
Well,
well,
it's kind of been an interesting one for them this year when you look at it, because as they've said before, this year as well, they acquired all the shares for anime studio Science Sorrow, and they've done a lot of animes people have loved and stuff like that. So they have that now in their pocket, an actual anime studio. They started the process of like branching outside of Japan with Toho International and stuff like that, which is based in Los Angeles. And that's basically where G Kids is going to be reporting to, because G Kids is in New York and they're going to be reporting to Toho International in LA, since they basically acquired all of G Kids and stuff. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully, it all goes well. And we know there's some great series coming from G Kids still. Angel Egg is one I know a lot of people are looking forward to and never thought we'd see the day for that. And then the other one that kind of comes together to tie this all together is Dan Da Dan, I believe. It's streaming on Crunchyroll, and I think it's
yeah,
even
that
on
seemed to be
Netflix
the
too.
bit.
But
Might be
that
a
one
bit of a talk right
supposedly
now.
G Kids is involved in that, and they had announced before this merger that they were going to basically release it for theatrical and home video. So I wonder if they knew before, and that's a Science Sorrow series. So I think probably this had been in the works long before. It's like basically Toho's like, okay, we got this anime studio. We know they're doing this. Then they had these discussions and said, hey, do you want to have this anime series? So G Kids got that Dan series, which was interesting. But the other thing is, it doesn't always mean they're going to get everything. So they said home video theatrical for G Kids for this series, right? But the internet streaming is interesting because it went to Crunchyroll, Hulu, and Netflix. So they gave it to everyone because this is a TV series. So it's interesting how that works out.
Play all avenues if you could, I guess.
But
Anyway,
we'll see what the future holds. But that was an interesting one for Dan Dan to see how that worked out the first time, right? Even though we didn't know it.
yeah, yeah. So there's that. Okay, No, as I said, that caught our attention. Anything else? Anywhere else you want to go before we finish up? Do we want to save a word for Doc Harris for a moment here? Doc Harris, the longtime narrator for the Dragon Ball dubs, passed away last week, I guess, a week or so ago. 76, and he was based in Vancouver. He was also a well-known broadcaster in on the West in BC.
I think he had done radio and stuff like that, right? That's what I was reading too, and stuff like that. And if you think about the narrator for Dragon Ball Z, it definitely has that broadcast. You know what I mean? That broadcast type voice when he was using it for that.
Would those have been ocean dubs?
Yeah, those were the ocean ones. So that was in Blue Water. So that one, I believe, when they did the Dragon Ball Z and those ones, when Funimation was doing it up here in Canada, it was through Calgary, through Blue Water. So he would have probably done that in Calgary.
That makes sense then. So refer to, like, since he was Canadian. But who's next? I wonder who's next to die. Who in the Dragon Ball realm? Been a little too many of these lately, especially on the Dragon Ball side, hasn't there? So, yeah, there's that. On the topic of other beloved voice actors, Oyama Nobuyo, the Japanese voice behind Doraemon, passed away also. This was about a week ago. She was 90. I get it with Doraemon, right? It's just...
Well, remember, that is a show that was ingrained in Japanese culture, and it did get out there into the world. They definitely tried to get it here in North America, and I know Disney tried, but I don't know, it just didn't, for whatever reason. It was just like Captain Tsubasa and stuff like that. Some of them, I guess, just don't have that. Something just didn't work in this market, or how they decide to do it just didn't work with our market. And it's unfortunate, because it probably would have been interesting to see kids all around the world trying to enjoy this show.
That all said, there is a certain awareness that even exists amongst our fandom outside, even if we never really got into Doraemon. So there's so that awareness leads to a lot of respect. So,
and that was her major role that she did for decades and decades, till she retired from it last decade. And I know that the reason she had to retire is, I think she started to get dementia, unfortunately. So that was unfortunate too.
Yeah. She retired in 2005 as part of a renewal of the voice actors for the main characters. Yeah, and she had 10 years later, 2015, dementia. So, yeah. Hey, 90 years old. I wish, right?
Yeah, no, I think she probably enjoyed an incredible career and an incredible life, hopefully, and now she's in a better place. So it's incredible to think. And her voice will be in the minds of so many people across the world, right? Especially in Japan.
Anyway, there's those. As I said, I want to go for didn't want to be the longest. Want to go for about an hour. Did you want to bring up any gripes you have, or do you want to save that for next week when you've cooled down?
I could go on for a second more or so. It's funny, because when you think about the anime sphere, as we said, there's only one big kid on the block left, right? Crunchyroll Net. And it's actually funny too when we think about that too, right? So Toho, we talked about them. They got G Kids, and remember, G Kids was independent. So now, when you think about it, sorry there.
Don't be. I'm having that type of stuff too.
Anyway, but if you think about it, Mike, how many independent anime companies do you think we have left in North America?
Yeah, good question, isn't it?
Especially since Sentai obviously is part of the AMC universe, as they say. But I think the only ones I know of, so Discotech is left. They're still independent. Anime Ego is still independent because Justin Savakis helped buy it off Robert and stuff like that and keep it in the Media OCD family.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
he has a role.
John Cirabella is still kicking and still selling at Media Blasters.
Yeah, but it's it's just the sign of the times. Anime has just become big business too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's late for us to have that conversation, but we've had that conversation in many forms before.
And you know what happens when we say about big business? So I was a part of, and I showed you guys that photo. So we have still ongoing the Dirty Pair Kickstarter.
Here's your gripe, right? Have at
And
it.
so, so basically, for the Dirty Pair Kickstarters, we know Sean Kleckner in that said, yes, Crunchyroll bought them and stuff like that for Right Stuff and Nozomi. And that basically they were going to make sure that this got finished off and stuff like that. And so it's still been ongoing. People are like, okay, what the heck's going on with this Kickstarter? And then Justin Savakis had come on to Twitter, I think, probably, I want to say probably, let's see here. It was, he had done that August 19th, so middle of August, and had been digging around. And supposedly some of the people on LinkedIn for Nozomi, their production people and stuff like that, it said basically that they had left the company or were no longer with Nozomi. And the last time they had done an update was in May of 2024. So people are like, well, what's going on? Are you guys going to finish this? And they started inundating the Crunchyroll support, which is kind of next to nothing, as we've said, because you just have to fill out a form. You can't even call people anymore. And so they had to release a statement, and they finally said, you know what, we feel bad and all this other nonsense, corporate speak. So they just said, after Labor Day, we're going to start sending out packages to everyone for anything that we have in the warehouse, which is basically shot glasses, magnets, all the little tchotchkes and stuff like that. And so that's what they started to do. And that was nice. And supposedly they sent us a nice card apologizing again. And the card even had a code on it for, I think, 20% off that we can use till the end of the year. But supposedly even that didn't work. Like the 20% coupon for some people wasn't working. So I don't know if mine's going to work. If I ever decide to use it, I'll probably have to go through customer support, which I did actually have to
Fill
do
out a
because
form.
I got my
Yeah.
box and I opened it up, and one of my shot glasses, now they had it in its own little box for the 2 shot glasses, and they put it in this bubble wrap. But
Oh
one of
boy.
the shot glasses, as I showed a picture to you, Mike, was completely broken. So I guess I was supposed to put my whiskey into the bubble wrapped little baggie with broken shards of glass and drink that down or something.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was the final nail in the coffin. But what, funny enough, I said, you know what? I took a picture, sent it to Crunchyroll support. They didn't get back to me for, I think, a week or some ridiculous thing, and said, oh, it's because we have high traffic and all this other nonsense. And then they wanted to confirm the address. So I did that. And it wasn't another 2 weeks till they got back to me then to basically say, okay, we're going to mail that to you. And they did mail it to me, which was nice. And I got an extra shot glass out of it. But the one thing that irritated me too when I'm putting in this form, because all you can do is through a web form, right? There's nothing that gets sent to my email that says, I've submitted the form. Once I finished it, you know how they'll send you to a page saying your form has been submitted or whatever? There was nothing like that. So I have no idea if it even went to them. It's probably went to owner space and back. And it was just like, oh man,
It's
it felt like the
it's
most
in the ether.
infuriating experience. And the other thing that's going to be crazy is, so we got all the merchandise type items, and the other one I remember was they had a lamp. So it's a light up lamp. They had that too that they sent out. But the one thing they still had to deliver is the Kickstarter, like the actual Dirty Pair Blu-rays. They still gotta guess the Blu-rays. They still gotta guess the box for the Blu-rays, and they still gotta guess the art book. And no one knows what's gonna, like they said, okay, we have all the materials. But the interesting thing is this: all their production people on the Nozomi side in Iowa are gone. So part of the promise that they're actually going to let them finish it up isn't going to happen, because guess who's going to have to make those discs? It's going to be Crunchyroll themselves at probably the Funimation facilities in Fort Worth in Dallas. And that'll be interesting to see where they fit that in, because right, they're trying to do their own stuff. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but it just leaves me shaking my head.
Don't hold your breath, or at least, well, I mean, you're a patient guy. I know that.
I think that, like, I know a lot of people haven't been very patient. Like, I think at the very least we'll get it. I'm intrigued to see, like, I think it'll be next year by likely they'll deliver it next year, but we'll see. But the other interesting thing though is after the whole kerfuffle of people sending them all these messages, they sent out some stuff to people, but they actually also updated the Kickstarter, and it was like naughty. Like Judy was the one that had been doing the Kickstarter updates, and she had done the other ones for them they'd done before. But it's just it's just total corporate speak, and there's not a name after the last couple of updates they've done. So it's just like, wow, they're just throwing it out there. And I think that's what happened with my broken shot glasses. They were probably trying to get all those things collecting dust and just get them out there to the people that were in those tiers.
Yeah.
But anyway, it'll happen, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But it's been a long road. But some Kickstarters, as you know, don't even get fulfilled, right? Like I at least have.
Oh yeah, I know those. I know those all too well.
I have a better feeling that this is going to hit the finish line. At least we got some of the stuff, compared to another anime Kickstarter, which everyone is still scratching their head over, and that is Garcia Phantom Trigger, which is by Frontwing. And they've been having issues with that and some of their other Kickstarters that they haven't even fulfilled, even though they've released some of the game stuff on other systems, all this other stuff, and they have to get from Japan. Like, people have basically started, like, from these Kickstarters, the one for the anime one, which is the first 2 episodes of the OVA of Garcia Phantom Trigger. Basically, they're basically calling Frontwing Fraudwing, and they said, when are you going to send us your next update that gives us a timeline that doesn't exist? Like, they've talked about COVID, they've talked about shipping, but all these other Japanese creators have managed to find ways to ship things. But Frontwing hasn't for Garcia.
Interesting way to put it, though.
But that one's even more funny, because you know what's happening in January of next year. Frontwing and their parent company, Bushy Road, basically are teaming up, and they're doing an anime of Garcia Phantom Trigger that's going to air on TV and stream and stuff. So we're not even going to see it before that, which people are just like losing their SH over. But they had laughed too, because remember this one, these Kickstarters they had done, I think, in 2018, 2017, and they're still ongoing. And Frontwing was its own thing and entity, and they were bought out by Bushy Road during this process, and still no one can figure out how to, like, make a disc and ship it to us.
The life of doing Kickstarters, dude.
Well, it is what it is. It's a gamble, right? And sometimes you look at it and you're like, I like what I see and stuff like that. And sometimes you're in for a gamble. And that one I was kind of like, I felt good about, but all I got out of that one so far, and most people got, was we got the first 2 episodes sub only, but they gave us a digital version through Steam. So that's how we have it. And this disc, supposedly they made a dub for these 2 episodes, but they were going to put it on the disc, so no one's heard the dub, even though it's been completed.
Interesting though. Well, I guess getting the 2 episodes is better than getting angry.
Well, that one was interesting. So it was based off the visual novel Front Wing had done stuff, and they wanted to create like their own OVA type thing. So the Kickstarter was for the first 2 episodes, and they had a third episode, but they never did anything with this third episode because they could never fulfill the first Kickstarter for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, what can you do, dude?
Uh,
Anyway.
but it is what it is. It's always interesting to see how certain things play out. But
Mm.
if you do want to actually, funny enough, back at Kickstarter, and I think this one will be all right and succeed. Is did you see this week that the people that have the rights to Electric Gaming Monthly, and think
Oh,
back to
okay.
the '90s of how big it was? They're doing the Electric Gaming Monthly or EGM compendium, looking at the history of the magazine, and it's on Kickstarter. And it looks like it'll be very interesting. And they're getting back a lot of the people that had worked on it over the years and all this other stuff. And then one of the things they're doing is they've already digitized all the old magazines. And one of the tiers is you get access to that digital archive of all the issues that they ever had produced.
EGM was a thing back then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It really was. So
And so, yeah, that one I think will definitely, it has already succeeded, but I think it'll deliver and stuff like that. But that one, it's when we were talking about video games, that was an institution way back in the day.
it was. It was. On the topic of archiving, right? So, okay, just finishing up. In the queue, whether it's play or watch, what's in your queue right now?
Well, I think I'm getting ready, as I said, to play East 10 Nordics next week. So we'll see how that does. But it's been not as much watching as I have been, so I don't have anything off the top of my head tonight.
Well, okay, for me, I mentioned last time I played Midnight Fight Express. Haven't really in the time off I've had in between jobs. I haven't had time to play anything on the PlayStation. So I'm trying to decide on my next game. The one thing, as I said, it won't be right now is a Yakuza game or like a Dragon game because I want to share that with both our listeners. Stream it, right?
Are you gonna? Sorry, I was gonna say, are you gonna do that before we get to have the Yakuza Hawaii game next year?
Yeah, when add that to the pile, right? I didn't. Apparently, they say that there's a 2-month free subscription to the Mega Fan tier in Crunchyroll. I don't know much about it. But maybe while I'm occupied, occupied right now, I probably won't renew Crunchyroll for a little bit. Still, it's been almost a year since my Crunchyroll membership ran out. So. And Netflix wise, well, it's there. So but that's it. I think if you're to ask me what I'm likely to do next at this point, since I have all of Kaguya-sama, Love is War, I'm thinking I'll just start over and just, read all the volumes now. Because I last year I read most of it, but I only got to, I think, volume 22 and stopped because I'd yet to get the others. I have all of them now. So maybe I'll just actually take the time to read them properly all the way through. But that's the cue for me. Not much. I have a lot of other reading to do, so that's it. How did I sound on this new board?
Because you sound great there, Mike.
Yeah, so this is the second time we're trying this new setup with the new Mike.
What did Mo say?
He liked it. Actually, I don't recall using the mute button nearly as many times on this new one as I have in the past on the other one. But then again, once again, I'm sick, or I'm a bit under the weather, right? So, I mean, that seems to be something that's been an issue for much of the last year. Every time the summer sickness sucks, autumn sickness sucks. Yeah, sickness sucks. And that seems to be a thing for me these days. So yeah, I've been dealing with a bit of that yet again. So the mute button to use for coughing has proven kind of convenient. So experiment has gone well. Happy to have all this in the repertoire. But the other thing is being. I keep joking, in between jobs. We have a little time right now, so I think you can expect to hear a few more tapings over the next little bit until things really rev up for all of us again, right? So want to do this again in next week or the week after, James?
Probably later on. Sorry, but definitely up for it another time and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, we met quota, so maybe early in November, sure, right? We met quota. We can be proud of that. We really could be proud of that. Go.
I was thinking there for a moment. I was thinking about what we had talked about Nozomi, and I should remind Kevin, since he loves to find things that maybe he can sell and stuff. He should start looking at the Nozomi catalog, because I don't think they're reprinting any of that stuff. And then the other funny thing I was thinking about, remember Macross when they announced all that stuff?
Yes.
I wonder what's going to happen to Macross Frontier, Macross 7, and Macross Delta, because I think those were under Nozomi.
Well, for reference, okay, let's in a final update. Macross 7, Macross 0, Flashback 2012, Lovers, Macross 2, Lovers Again. So these were added in the last week or last couple days to Disney Plus in Canada.
Yeah, it's weird. Certain regions, and we've gotten some before the US, I think, for some of the Macross things. So that's interesting, isn't it? Thinking on that too.
What can you do? I mean,
but hey, at least it's out there, right?
It's a pick and choose, dude. It's a pick and choose. And once again, I still have 2 versions of the original anime. And one of them feature Maria Jima playing Minmay in English too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I have that version from ADV too. I think that is a keeper. I would never sell that one because it's great to have her in Japanese or English, right?
Right. And then guess who plays Hikaru? Anyway, as I said, we met quota for this month. Please give us our props. animeroundtable@gmail.com. animeroundtable.com @animeroundtable. That's where you can find us. Other stuff, hopefully I'll have time to add. I have a little bit, but yeah, I joke about having some. Yes and no. You'll bit of an explanation there. The others know. And as a podcast, yeah, hit us up on a review. Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify. Give us a review, even if we suck. At least we know you're there. And hopefully, there'll be more than 2 around the table next time. And we can do a regular episode, right? So have another Space Eater. We'll do a Space Eater. It's easy too. Hey, James, good to hear from you.
No, same as well.
So, and thanks, and to everyone else out there, good to talk to you as well. Enjoy the weekend.